What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the TEN SEVEN MMA Show, and we are back after an amazing weekend at UFC 302. What an incredible card! I mean, well, some people are talking a little smack about it, saying it wasn't the best card. I actually really enjoyed it. The main title fight was amazing. I actually did enjoy the Strickland versus Costa fight, and I'll tell you why when we get to that segment in the show. And I also want to turn over to Justin to get his thoughts on Strickland's fighting style in general, because there was an amazing segment on the Weighing In podcast that really dissected and broke down the way that Strickland fights, why he's so successful, and why he's such an amazing fighter. And I want to get your thoughts, Justin, on that, you being Sean's teammate. So anyways, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. There's so much news. We got six different topics, not to mention the Conor McGregor presser was canceled at the last minute, which is obviously alarming and startling for a lot of folks. Ariel Helwani today on the MMA Hour claims that there's nothing nefarious going on, that the fight is apparently still scheduled and still aiming to happen at UFC International Fight Week at UFC 303. So anyways, without further ado, Justin, what'd you think of the card of 302?
I mean, I thought there was a lot of highs and a lot of lows. Obviously, Dustin and Islam took the candle away from everybody. I mean, the Strickland's fight was relatively predictable, man. That's the thing. People talk about having different game plans against different fighters. Sean Strickland has the same game plan every single time. We talked about what he was going to do. He did exactly what we thought. Paulo Costa, man, had that dangerous power throughout, but it was an okay fight card. Like I said, if it wasn't for the Dustin Islam fight, I think it would have been a lower, kind of a boring card, lots of decisions. And let's talk about that judging, man. We're talking about some of the worst judging I've ever seen. We're 50-45, 49-46 for Strickland. Then some idiot scores at 49-46 for Costa. These judges really need to be held accountable. I've been a part of some really bad decisions. What judges fail to realize is this is our livelihood. This is our job. If by their bad call, they're chancing us at losing our job at some point in our career, man. And I just think that this bad judging needs to be held accountable. I think Dana White said it. But again, overall as a card, it was an okay card. Like I said, Dustin Islam took the cake, and I always love seeing Sean fight as he's my teammate. But the rest of the fights were pretty lackluster in my opinion. Oh, Kevin Holland with the arm break was pretty awesome.
That was awesome, right? And we're going to talk about Kevin Holland. He's our third topic up today, and maybe talk about what's next for Kevin Holland. It's very interesting. When it comes to the judging, I know that what's it called? John McCarthy, the one of the first refs for the UFC. He has a course for judges to teach them how to score
and referee. He does it at Extreme Couture. He does it at Extreme Couture.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's dope. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like that needs to happen. I don't know if the UFC can actually impact that, because I think it's like the judges are chosen from the commissions in each state. So it's like this weird thing. I just feel like there needs to be some personal responsibility in terms of hey, I actually want to do a good job, not just showing up, collecting a paycheck, and I don't know, just take some pride in your work. Even if you want to think about the fate of the fighters, fine. You don't care about the fighters, okay, but take some pride in your work. Do a good job if you're going to show up and collect a paycheck. I don't know. That's my perspective. Spend some time, learn about it. I think that could be enjoyable, but I guess it is what it is, and we're still stuck with this horrendous judging. And it wasn't just on the Strickland Costa fight. There was a lot of really weird cards coming in. I think I even heard one of the judges' scorecards. I don't know if this is true, because somebody said it and then somebody said it was not true, but somebody even said that Islam and Dustin was 2-2 going into the fifth round on one of the judges' scorecards. That may be incorrect, because like I said, I think that statement was recanted. But anyways, it was a lot of rough judging, and it is what it is. But without further ado, let's jump into the Islam versus Dustin fight. That was pure incredible fight. I was rewatching it right before the show again today, and I watched it with my MMA coach, Pete. We were talking about it a lot. I was so impressed with, both fighters, but especially Islam's striking, I think in particular. But Justin, what's your take on this entire fight and what it says about both fighters?
Here's the thing, man. We talked about it before. I think Islam has some holes. Now, again, he is incredible. He's the best. He's the champ. He's the best. But now I feel he's been exposed twice. Volkanovski exposed him, and I really feel Dustin exposed him, man. Dustin isn't known for his wrestling, but he had such great takedown defense. It was incredible to watch, and get that low single at the very end and scoop it out, which is a great technique. It's not like, I've heard a lot of people say, oh my God, I've never seen that technique before. Well, that means you don't have a wrestling base. I've seen that technique 10,000 times. It's an incredible technique. It's just a low ankle scoop. It's nothing that's just like, oh my God, it's mind blowing. Like I don't like people reacting like that because again, I teach that technique in my wrestling class. You go to a high school wrestling gym, they teach the same technique. It's a great technique, but it's not like it was just the hidden forbidden technique. Now, what
Yeah.
I think where Islam is having a success when he's winning, when he's a front runner, and a lot of people talked about this, is to beat Islam, you have to put him in a dogfight. I'm not saying he's gonna cower and wilt away. That's not what I'm saying. But if you want any chance at winning, you have to apply the pressure. You have to stuff his takedowns. I really thought, going into that fifth round, the tides were starting to swing in Dustin way. Now, did I think he was winning that fight up until that point? No. But I did see some great moments for him, and how great did his takedown defense. Again, I really think in order to beat Islam Makhachev, you need to have heat and pressure on him from the beginning of the bell to the end. And towards that fourth and fifth round, I personally saw Islam start to buckle a little bit. Saw it with Volk too. When Volk, I'm not saying that he was losing or getting his ass whipped. That's not what I'm saying. But the tide was turning, and I really think that is the way to beat Islam. Is you have to you have to get in his head and make him know he's in a fight.
All right, so I want to point out a couple of things, and people might say, all right, hey, you're just a homer for Islam or whatever, but there's a couple of things I want to point out. I want to get your thoughts on it. So 3 things in particular. So number 1, the first Alexander Volkanovski fight where it seemed like he was almost gassing out. Remember, he had that weird rehydration issue with the IV, and you mentioned that you've done that before, and it really made you feel messed up. Number 2, in this fight, I think it was pretty widely reported that Islam indeed did have a staph infection. I think that was almost universally confirmed, even though he didn't say it, but he kind of danced around it when he was asked about it. And he's like, I'm going to be fine. It's all good, but wouldn't say yes or no whether he had the staph infection. So I think that also impacted his cardio. Point number 3 is that how much do we say this as a whole in Islam's game versus Dustin doing correct preparation? Because Dustin, of his own admission, said he trained with Gamrot for 6 weeks straight, specifically about takedown defense, getting back up after being taken down, etc. And so Gamrot worked him over. And Islam himself commented on Dustin having done amazing preparation for this fight in terms of the takedown defense. So I just want to throw that out there. If you take those 3 facts into consideration, was this really a hole in Islam's game, or was it a combination of him dealing with the staph infection plus Dustin doing incredible preparation, being just that good at takedown defense?
Okay, I used the wrong word. I shouldn't say hole because obviously his wrestling is not a hole. You know what I mean? Like I spoke incorrectly. But what I mean by a hole, it's not a hole. I'm just trying to figure out a way how I can word this correctly without sounding like an idiot. But it's not, again, it's not so much a hole, but there is a blueprint now. There is a blueprint going into that 4th and 5th round. If we can apply pressure to Islam and stop his wrestling, and yeah, with being on antibiotics and stuff for staph infection, that definitely can play effect on his cardio. The Volkanovski fight for the first time, I don't remember, and I saw a picture today that he had staph, and it looked like he had staph infection on his shin, and
Yes.
there was talk about that. Again,
Yes.
a hole isn't the right word. I'm going to rephrase, but I do think the blueprint to beating Islam is to take him to deep water and make him in a fight and make sure the champ can answer. And he has answered. He's answered every time. He's the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world. But, he's talking about going up to welterweight with Leon Edwards. Can he, man, that's going to be a tough task. I knew Dustin was going to be a tough task. Dustin fought a perfect fight, the best of his ability. Unfortunately, just got caught there in the 5th. But now he talks about going up to welterweight and being the double champ. Can he do the same thing to Leon Edwards? I think that's going to be a much taller, tougher task.
I think so too. And I want to talk about that right after this, because I've heard a lot of people talk about that matchup between Leon and how difficult of a matchup it is and why it's so difficult, because I want to get your thoughts on that. But another thing that I heard that was interesting, not to get too technical, obviously getting super technical is a little bit out of my realm, but people were mentioning that as the rounds get later, so this could be to your point, right, about taking him into deep waters and letting the fight really go long. As the fight goes on longer and longer, Islam loves the body lock, right? So getting that body lock becomes exponentially harder, according to, again, the Weighing In podcast, because of the sweat and because of the perspiration. So then it becomes harder and harder to grip, and it gets easier to get out of those locks. And that seemed to be what was happening with Dustin as we got later into the fight. Obviously, eventually got submitted with the Darce choke, but do you think there's some substance to that claim? Like, hey, as we get later in the fight, maybe Islam's grappling becomes less effective due to the perspiration and the sweat.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it's nobody can argue that point. I mean, when you're slippery, you know, you lose your grip. You don't have the same, like, guys wiggle out of submissions more. It's easier to defend takedowns. And how Dustin was defending is we call it a limp leg technique, where he'll actually turn his butt towards his partner to limp leg out. And that was the technique he used throughout the night. And unfortunately, he tried to limp leg in that 5th round, and that's when he got caught on the ankle.
Mm.
But as you know, from the limp leg technique, it works so much better in MMA than it does in collegiate wrestling, because in collegiate wrestling or high school wrestling, you have a shoe. So when you go to limp leg and your leg slides out, a lot of times your opponent can grab onto your shoe, which is legal. In MMA, you don't have ankle wraps. You don't have shoes. So that foot will slide out of there so much easier. So to your point, absolutely. If anybody says otherwise, they're a fucking idiot and they've never fought before.
Got you. Okay. Now let's move along to like what's next for both of these fighters. This was a crazy thing. And I think we talked briefly after the fight. You know, it did seem like Dustin was potentially planning to retire if he did lose this fight. I kind of felt like he didn't, almost out of respect to Islam, because he didn't want to take the spotlight away from Islam, though he did say of his own admission he needs to think about it. There's obviously a lot of money still being left on the table because Dustin is such a superstar, so that may, you know, go in different directions. But first, before we talk about what's next for Islam, what do you, if you had to choose, if you were in Dustin's position, like, what do you think you would do?
Oh man, if I was in Dustin, I mean, how big is his bankroll? You know, I mean, that's going to come down to it. And, you know, he's still at the pinnacle of his career. He's still one of the best fighters in the world. You know, why? I mean, what it was a telltale to me, he didn't take his gloves off after the fight.
Yes.
You know, and he talked about it, and I was waiting for him to do it, and he just never did. And that tells me that, you know, he's not satisfied. He's going to get back in there. Again, since he didn't take his gloves off, I think we're going to see him back. Now, where are we going to see him? All right. Justin Gaethje is going to be fighting here soon. Or is he going to? Could we do a rematch with Justin Gaethje and Poirier? Probably not. But I'd be okay with it. I'd be definitely okay with it. I think. How many times they fought? Just once?
No, they fought twice.
They fought twice. Dustin won the first line. Justin won the second one, right?
Yeah.
So
correct.
I mean, why not go out in a banger like that and try and get the best of 3? I mean, that's a fan favorite fight. Do I think that's realistic for the UFC? I don't really see it, but I would love to see that fight. I'd love to see him settle the score. Now you look, fuck, who else?
Nate Diaz.
Nate Diaz. No, I don't, man. Nick
No?
Diaz, maybe. I don't know. I mean, who's Nate fighting right now? Isn't he fighting at welterweight as well? He has a fight scheduled right now.
He's fighting Jorge Masvidal in boxing, but he still could come back.
You mean Nick Diaz?
No, I'm talking about Nate Diaz.
Oh, Oh, yeah, that is right. He is fighting Jorge Masvidal. That is right in boxing. And then Nick Diaz is fighting who? He's just got
Chiesa. No, not Chiesa. He's fighting. It's a tough Vicente Luque.
Oh yeah, that's right, Vicente Luque, which I think is a setup fight for him. But I tell you what, I'd love to see that matchup. I think Dustin's a huge favorite in that. I want to see Dustin go out on a win. He deserves it. He deserves a easier matchup. You know, the guy's been fighting top 5 guys for the last 5 years. You know, he's been to the top. He's lost a couple fights. Like, hey, that'd be a great fight for him to come in and fight Diaz. You know, and then retire on a win on that, because I think he fucks up Diaz pretty bad. But man, I mean, there's not many options because he's fought everybody else. You know, who else? Who's new blood that he hasn't fought?
Yeah, I mean,
who.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that comes to mind that I'd be curious or interested in seeing him fight. I think Nate would be all right, but I don't know. And again, see, that's the dilemma now. Josh point. So I don't know what you think about this, but he's like, no matter how much money you have as a fighter, even if Dustin already has 10 million or tens of millions in the bank. He said anything can change. This prime time, though, once it's gone, it's gone. You take a year off, you take 2 years off, coming back, you'll never, he said, you're going to lose a step and you'll never come back the same. Even if he took the example of Paul Felder, he's like, yeah, he was running triathlons and doing all the stuff. So his cardio was great, but he came back and he had some problems because of the time away from sparring and training and all that stuff specific to the sport of martial arts. So he said, if he were Dustin, because he can still make so much money, make hay while the sun shines. And that was his perspective, at least get a couple more fights in there while his star power is so high. I don't know if people agree or disagree. And again, you have to take into consideration, I know he's concerned about his health and his well-being to be around for his daughter and his wife. But anyways, these are the considerations. If you're asking me, man, I wouldn't mind seeing Dustin right off into the sunset. He does have a lot of amazing things. It would be incredibly sad just from a fan perspective, but I think he's done amazing things. I'd be somewhat interested to see him fight Nate Diaz. I kind of don't want to see him fight Justin Gaethje. That's me personally. It was such a battle. He took a lot of damage. I just don't want to. I don't like that. I don't like seeing those two fight because I think everybody loves both of those fighters so much. I don't know if you agree or disagree. It was a great fight, but I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of where. So me wanting it to see him step away from the sport or maybe leaning towards that's only because I'm such a fan of him, but obviously I want to see him do whatever he wants to do. So now let's talk about Islam. Okay, moving up to welterweight, Dana White seems to not want this to happen whatsoever. For whatever reason, probably has some business reasons in there that he doesn't want him to go up and move weight divisions and whatnot. But he does seem to want to fight Leon. Now, a lot of people are saying that Leon is a very difficult matchup, and this is what I want to get your take on because of the speed and because of his takedown defense, which is second to none in the UFC. So do you see those same type of issues that speed being a major factor in the matchup between Islam and Leon?
Yeah, I think the speed and the size. Islam, I know, cuts a lot of weight to go down to 55, and I get
Yes.
that. But to make 55, even if it's a really hard cut, makes you a small guy up in the upper weight. You know what I mean? And I know Islam. But with that being said, I'll be devil's advocate here. What if he goes up to 170, doesn't have as hard of a cut? Has a better gas tank, he's going to be stronger. He's, what I mean? Like his grip strength might be better. His cardio might be better. So it might not be a bad thing. So now when we're talking about the business aspect of what's next for Islam, I think this is what I think. And this is not hearsay that I've heard at the gym. This is just my pea brain putting something together. I think that if Conor McGregor beats Michael Chandler, Dana White wants Conor and Islam to fight. Now, if Islam goes up to 170, it's gonna be a full fight camp. You know what I mean? So he might not come back to 155 until next year.
Got
But
it. Yes.
if June 29th, Conor goes out there and starches Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor is going to get probably an immediate title shot to keep Islam down at 55. If Islam goes up to 70, he might not go back down to 55 ever again, or not until next year. But again, if Conor McGregor wins June 29th, now Islam and Conor can be lined up for September or October, and that's going to make the UFC millions and millions just because of the backstory. With Habib there, he's going to be in his corner. Do I think Conor can beat Islam? Absolutely not. But I'd want to watch it.
Heck yeah, I'd want to watch it.
No, you would, and I know everybody else in the world would too.
Yeah. It would be a dark press conference, but it would be real. It would be gritty. They would go at it. There would be true animosity there. And for whatever it's worth, right? Like, and we don't know. Conor did actually an amazing job against Habib. He really hung in there. He looked fresh in the third round. He actually won the third round by most judges, by most people's scorecards. I mean, Conor's got some tricks up his sleeve. You never know. I mean, maybe he hasn't been taking the training seriously. That's still up in the air. But man, I think it'd be incredible, and he would take that fight very seriously. That'd be everything on the line for him. So I think that'd be fantastic. That makes a lot of sense. So let's see what happens. It does seem like the Arman Sarukian fight is definitely happening. Conor could slide in there before, after, who knows? A lot of exciting stuff. What an amazing fight, and what a great way to end UFC 302. All right, let's move it along to the co-main, which was your boy Sean Strickland versus Costa, and it was domination. So he called it domination. However, it is that crazy scorecard. One of the judges did score for Costa, which was bananas, and I think everybody's acknowledged that. But I want to talk specifically about Sean Strickland's fighting style, because people love his antics, people love his interviews, and that, there's all that. There was an amazing interview with him and Megan O'Leary, by the way, that was just Sean without it
was awesome, dude. I watched it.
You saw that?
Watched it at least twice. It's so awesome. Yeah, it's the best interview I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was heartfelt. Okay, maybe I'll pull it up right now while we're talking about this, because it was really, really amazing. It was short and sweet and to the point, but he just was kind of very, very genuine in that. Let me pull it up right now. But let me ask you this, okay? So I heard a really interesting breakdown of Sean's fight style on the Weighing In podcast, basically talking about how amazing of a fighter he is, and them saying that they don't think that anybody in the middleweight division can beat Sean, that if he fought Dricus again, he would definitively win, even though most people felt like he won last time, that he would beat Izzy, that essentially maybe the one tough fight for him would be Khamzat Chimaev potentially, but that he basically would beat everybody. And here's how they described his fight style. So when they said he's one of the few guys in mixed martial arts that correctly utilizes the jab. It doesn't get utilized properly in the sport of mixed martial arts, and it's such a powerful weapon. So that's one. Number two, they said with this constant barrage of teeps, he is really, really slick at not only kicking people in the solar plexus and in the stomach and causing damage that way. But even when it's blocked, he's constantly tagging the arms and the elbows, and that damages the arms much more than people think, and then compromises your ability as an opponent to throw punches, throw elbows, etc., because your arms are getting so banged up, which I never thought about. And then the other thing is because he's constantly lifting his front leg. All right, we're getting a little technical today, but I really want to know your thoughts on this. He's constantly lifting his front leg, which means that throwing leg kicks, even calf kicks, is very difficult because you have to be quick because he's up and down, up and down. And that also, last but not least, allows him to check kicks effectively. We saw that against Costa, checking and damaging Costa's legs very severely. There's one point where Costa was like hopping around for a while because I think he was injured. So anyways, this is what they said about how his fight strategy and his fight tactics are so effective. Turning it over to you as a teammate at Extreme Couture. Have you ever heard these things? Do you feel the same way, or do you feel differently?
Man, well, let me tell you this. That's exactly right. So, back when I was in the UFC and I fought Gavin Tucker, Gavin Tucker was the top 25 opponent. I got to fight him on short notice. All right, Gavin destroyed me with teep kicks. He never landed one to the body. I blocked every single one, either with my forearm or my elbow, but my forearms were damaged. I remember in the third round, he just kept throwing it. And I remember consciously thinking, like, God damn, please stop throwing these teep kicks. Not because he's landing in my body, but every time I have to come down with my left hand to scoop and I'm hitting like his shin.
Yes.
I'd block his foot, but his shin or his ankle would hit me in the forearm just over and over and just braiding my arms, man. It was tragic. Now, let's talk about something that nobody's talked about except on the 10-7. I don't believe Sean Strickland's game plan coming into that fight was to throw those teep kicks like he did. I think that Sean made an adjustment on the fly because he got Costa kicked him in the calf early on in that fight, and he knew by throwing alternating teep kicks, Costa can't throw that strike is effective because his feet are always up near it, to your point. But again, I don't think it was a conscious game plan going in there to do that, because you look at the beginning of the fight, he wasn't doing that. It's when his legs started to get compromised. He started left teep, right teep, walking him down, teep, 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 because he has to keep Costa honest with those leg kicks. And again, that just goes to show the mindset and how smart Sean is, because I don't care what anybody says. I'll see Sean tonight at the gym. I'm going to ask him, and we'll know next time we do the podcast, was that an on the fly conscious game plan change? And I'm willing to bet it was.
Yeah, and so and just to get into the nitty gritty a little bit, right? We got Eric Nixick in his corner, obviously your coach, legendary coach. Is that something that what's your opinion? Do you think that Sean made that adjustment on the fly, or is that something that Nixick saw and yelled, or what do you think? How do you think that unfolded?
I think Sean made the adjustment on the fly. Sean is a very, very, very smart fighter, and he's really good at teep kicks, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But in all his fights, he doesn't walk people down with teep kicks. He uses his teep kick as a defensive maneuver when they're coming forward, or to advance himself going forward. But he never goes left, right, left, right, left, right. He's never done that before. So in my opinion, say it again, I think his leg was compromised. I mean, Costa, look how hard he kicks and how fast. He had swelling on it in the first 3 kicks. I think Sean didn't like that, and he knew in his head, like, I cannot keep my feet on the ground because I don't know how many more of these I can take. I think, it could have been Eric, but Eric was mic'd up, and I always like to listen to what Eric has to say in between rounds. And Eric is a motivational guy. I don't recall him ever saying, hey, let's throw left, right, left, right, left, right to keep him on balance. I think Sean came in there on his own, made the adjustment, and made a successful adjustment at that, keeping Costa back with those teep kicks.
So cool. I mean, like, I know that some people were booing at the fight, which blows my mind. I was watching with my MMA coach, and it's just so annoying. Like, the boos made no sense. I hope people think about this and rewatch that fight with this in mind, because I was fascinated by the strategy of the fight. Now even more so. I'm probably going to watch it again tonight after hearing your take, but I thought it was super cool. So now people are wondering what's next for Sean Strickland. He mentioned that he thinks he should just get a straight up title shot again. And I think he's even said he's willing to wait for the next title shot, either go right in there with Duplessis. By the way, they didn't announce Duplessis versus Adesanya, which I was surprised. I thought they would. So maybe that deal is still getting worked on. But I think that kind of makes sense. I don't see where else he should go other than a title shot. But the division is so confusing because we got Hamzat versus Whitaker. I mean, what do you think should be next for Sean?
Dude, I'd love to see him get back into his title shot, man. I don't think Dricus can beat him twice in a row unless you have that one trash judge on the panel.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him get back in a title shot. But from a fan perspective, take my personal relationship out of it. I want to see him fight Hamzat because I really think that he can expose Hamzat. Sean is very, very hard to take down, and keeping him down is another animal. And I think
Hmm.
Hamzat's really, really good, but can he do it for 5 rounds, man? And I think Sean will walk Hamzat down, defend his takedowns, and get in a big brawl. Now, again, that's the fan in me. That's the fight I want to see as the fan. As you know, Sean's friend and have a personal relationship with him. I want him to get that belt back. I think he deserves it.
I think he deserves it too. It's funny because Sean and Hamzat are two of my favorite fighters, so it's always weird for me because like I don't like those fights when it's too like again the same reason why I didn't like Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. I'm curious to know if people agree or disagree with that take, but like that's just my personal thing, so I don't want to see it. However, if Hamzat or Sean goes up and gets the title again, then I'd be open to seeing them fight for the title because it makes sense. Something that they both want. They're both going for it. It's good. That fight will be unbelievable, by the way. Holy smokes. Sean Strickland versus Hamzat. Hamzat's always coming forward, aggressive on the take. I mean, it would be wild. Plus, they're actually friends, but they'll go back and forth. I don't know. It would be incredible. But yeah, I think one of those two, I think that makes sense. By the way, Western Mass Climber, Sean beat Dricus. I think that's the consensus. That's even what Dana White said. So it's just, man, the sport is weird sometimes with the judging, and it is what it is. I'm sure it'll get fixed eventually, possibly with like AI judges or something along those lines. It'll get fixed eventually. All right, we got so much to talk about. Man, I have a hard stop at 2, which is such a bummer. I'm gonna jump ahead a couple of topics. I did want to talk about Kevin Holland, and I also want to talk about that Nico Price versus Alex Moreno fight, only because Morono, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The striking was so bizarre, and I want to talk to you about it, but I want to jump ahead because this is a really big story, and this is very important, I think, for the future of the UFC as well. Not that they need Conor, but man, having Conor come back in a resurgence in his career, I think it would be so massive for the company and the stockholders and the investors as well in the business. So we're supposed to have a presser in Dublin today, which was going to be unbelievable with McGregor and Michael Chandler, and it got canceled at the last minute. That presser sold out in 7 minutes or 5 minutes or something ridiculous. So fans are obviously quite disappointed. A lot of people traveled there not a lot, but a certain amount of people traveled there for the presser. There's supposedly nothing nefarious going on, but what's your gut tell you that this presser was canceled? Do you think the fight's still happening? What do you think's going on?
You know, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and not just between Connor, not just with Mike, but production wise, Dana White. I mean, nothing has come out, so I don't want to jump to conclusions and say, oh my God, the fight's going to be canceled because of this. I'm going to wait a little while and see, because for all we know, it could be a simple production mistake. And it could be a simple production mistake. It could be somebody missed a flight. It could be, I mean, there's so many things it could be. I don't want to jump right to the worst possible reason and say, oh fuck, because their fight's off. I'm gonna wait at least throughout the week, because I mean, as details emerge, things are gonna happen again. It could be something simple. I'm hoping it's something simple, because if this fight's off, man, I mean, where does Conor McGregor go after this? Just, he hasn't fought in so long. He's lost so many fights in a row. Like this, like you're talking about Conor McGregor's resurgence. I mean, this is his time. But that's another thing, it's kind of concerning, is more videos of Conor are popping up of him partying at the club and dancing and this and
Yeah.
that. And maybe the fight is canceled and he already knows it's canceled. That's why he's out living the best life, or he's not taking this serious, man. There's just so many things that could be, coming forward. And I don't want to, dude, it's one thing being on a podcast is, I get messages like, oh, you're spreading false information. I'm not spreading any information. I'm just saying what it possibly could be. With the whole Tyson could die, when
Yeah.
we made that video, like, that's not going to happen. That's Iron Mike, blah, 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 whatever. But regardless, I'm just going to wait a couple days before I make any thought towards this, because again, it could be something as simple as somebody missed a flight.
Fair enough, and that totally could be, and we legitimately don't know. Ariel Helwani today on the MMA Hour did say, "Hey, there's no reason to believe that the fight should be off." I'll tell you my feeling. It does make me worried, because I do think that was going to be a huge publicity event to promote the fight. It was probably pretty important for the UFC. It wasn't necessary, but it was probably pretty important. A lot of people had spent money and spent time coming out there. I think that means, I mean, if this thing is going to be canceled, I think that means like something weird is off, or so. I don't know. I'm worried, and it's just such a bummer. It's like we had this fight that is so exciting and getting so much attention. The gate, $20 million gate, biggest gate of all time. It's so wild. And if it falls apart, it would be really sad. It's kind of like the Colby versus Ian Gary fight that we were also highly excited about. And I think that's one of the travesties in the sport. It's like, when there's certain things that should happen and they just fall through for some reason, it's just such a disappointment, because these would be just absolutely killer events. Justin, we got to wrap up in 2 minutes because, guys, I'm so sorry. I have a hard stop at 2 p.m. Last thing I want to say, to your point, right? Talking about the dangers of Mike Tyson in this fight against Jake Paul, I did want to end on this. The fight is now delayed. And not only that, it may be off. Somebody who, I think it was Jesse on Fire, somebody looked up like the typical recovery time for an ulcer like this, and they said it couldn't take like 12 weeks, something crazy like that. So I know they're saying, hey, maybe it'll get postponed a month or 2 months. Like, that may not be the case. It may get postponed much longer. And again, the health issues at that age, right? Maybe you can get in there and you can look good on pads, but there's all these other underlying issues that seem to be cropping up. Obviously, in this one in particular, Mike Tyson had to get removed from a plane due to a medical emergency. Just to close it out, what do you think is going to happen here? What do you predict?
I mean, I want to see the fight. I want to see Tyson go in there and knock Jake Paul out. But if he's not cleared medically, I don't want to see the fight. I don't want him getting in there half-assed. You know, an interesting take I saw, Logan Paul came up and said, "Hey, why don't we settle this right now?" And you know what? That would be a fun fight to watch.
That would be.
I would love to see that. So, I mean, if Logan Paul has to step up there, you know, two brothers fight, you know, that I think that will be a lot of fun. Tyson, again, in my opinion, one of the greatest boxers, in everybody's opinion, is one of the greatest boxers. To me, he's my favorite boxer of all time. I mean, if he's not fit to fight, I don't want him to fight. Even if he is fit to fight, he's 58 years old. I mean, if this fight gets canceled, I'm not going to be disappointed. You know, I've said it since day one, man. This guy could die in there. So, anyways, I mean, the fans can be selfish all they want, but at the end of the day, this guy's a human being, and he needs to do what's best for his health.
Agreed. And I'll just end on this. That's the fight to make. If this fight doesn't happen, it's either got to be Jake Paul against KSI or it's got to be Jake Paul against Logan Paul. One of those two, that will fill the void, and that will still make for an amazing event. First ever on Netflix. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. This is amazing. We love doing the show every week. If you did like this video, make sure to click that like button. If you're joining now and you haven't subscribed, subscribe. You'll join us every Monday and Fridays for more takes from the 10-7 MMA Show. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time. Take it easy.